Earlier this evening, three of us had some interesting conversations about the way that our culture is broken, the way that civility has broken down. Let me give you a couple of numbers that are actually pretty scary. 15% of Americans have terminated a friendship over political differences. The reality is 53% of the R's have a Democrat friend, only 32% of Democrats have a Republican friend. Granted, a lot of that report is being related to former President Trump. Kevin Drum, who I don't know, but is a liberal journalist with Mother Jones, said, quote, "If you hate culture wars, blame liberals." He wrote that in Washington Monthly. Is it fair to blame more liberals for the culture divide, or is it one that both sides have to take blame for?
I think that both sides certainly engage in manufactured culture wars, and it's frustrating to see it. Full disclosure, I myself have engaged in it, and I think instead of being oblivious or delusional about it, it's important to acknowledge when you've made the mistakes, right? And so the demonizing doesn't help. At the end of the day, we have to realize that we're all Americans. We all want the same thing. Fundamentally, we are the same. We might have different solutions, different ideas. Demonizing.
I just have to stop this right now. Now, look, we all do that to a certain extent. I don't know about demonizing, but we all use sometimes certain languages. We call out people, call them just sometimes, stupid, idiot, moronic, retard. I mean, we utilize that, okay? So, of course, we're in the media business. We want people to watch, but we obviously are offering our opinions, which we think are for the good of the country. When Ana here is talking about that fundamentally we want the same things, that is absolutely not true. We couldn't be further apart on big issues. Like, you know what? Taxes, low or high. Okay, all right. We can debate that. Policies, do we want, fair trade or do we want free trade? Okay, we can talk about those things. Policies in those things, I mean, is it going to harm some people? Well, maybe at the pocketbook. Maybe it's going to hurt a business or so, or help a business. But the fundamental dividing questions that we're talking about, when you're talking about gender, race, ethnicity, abortion, where do we come together on this? We just can't. There's no way we can. How do we come together on abortion? Where do we draw the line to compromise, to either abort or not to abort, to kill your baby, to not kill your baby? How do we draw that line there? How do we draw the line? Do we allow a man to go into a girl's bathroom? Do we allow a man to shower with your daughter in the shower in school? Do we allow a man to go into a YWCA or YMCA, take off his clothes or whatever and say that, he's a woman when it's Women's Day over there? Are these the things? Do we allow men to compete in girls' sports? I mean, these are fundamental different. Don't tell me that we all fundamentally want the same thing. That's not true. That's why there are culture wars. Let's continue.
The other side doesn't help to accomplish any solutions. Again, we're seeing that play out in real time as we speak. I think that there's a market for the division, and that market is being exploited by our media. It's being exploited by politicians. Facebook is in the news today. I think that Facebook, it makes money based on engagement, and people are engaged in the constant conflict. So it's important to be honest about what the real threats in society are. I think it's important to focus on why it is that, certain industries, including the media, engage in this culture of division. And we ought to talk about how the incentives are in the wrong place. I mean, there are no incentives to engage in, friendly conversation or friendly debate. I hate that my chair keeps, and I'm short, so I'm trying to figure out how to do this.
I don't know.
I hate turning my back to people. Here, I'll just do this. I'll sit on the very edge. We got to be aware of why it is that people engage in the divisive rhetoric that they engage in. There's a profit motive behind it oftentimes. I see it play out in the media. It's really, really hard not to fall victim to it myself, right? But when I take a step back and I look at where the country is right now, it's shameful. We don't see each other as fellow Americans. We don't see each other as even fellow colleagues or workers in the workplace. Everyone has a political identity, and that's it. And that's not helpful. I think the division in the country is incredibly embarrassing, especially on a world stage, and we gotta be more cognizant of that as we engage in political discussions.
I certainly agree with him.
You know what, folks? First of all, the world stage, Ana, listen, I tell people this all the time. I tell my wife this all the time. I tell my kids this all the time. I am, where we live in a community, the community is quite liberal here in North Carolina. All right? I mean, there's pockets where it's conservative. It just so happens that in the community, in the place where we live in, there's fundamentally, I mean, I've got a lot of liberal, progressive friends. And I am the red dot in basically a blue sea of liberalism. And I tell my family and I tell people, I don't give a darn. I'll tell you what, I don't give a damn what people think about me, what they say about me, whether it's in front of me, whether it's behind my back. I don't care what they say. I don't care if they say that, you know, this guy loves Trump, that this guy is an absolute put America first person forward all the time, that this guy thinks that there's only two genders and there's only two sexes and abortion is evil and abortion is wrong. I make my opinions known and I stick with them. I challenge other people on their opinions. They challenge me on mine. At the end of the day, we're always maybe we can come to some agreement, but most of the time, you know what? I've got my opinion. When I'm right, I'm right. When you're left, you're wrong. I always say that all the time. Ana here, she's talking about on the world stage, it's a disappointment. Listen, I don't give a damn what I say amongst my friends and colleagues and people in the community and voice my opinions. You think I give a damn about what the world thinks? Let the world think what they want. We are the greatest country in the history of the world, the United States of America. God bless America. Wave that flag around every single chance you get. That's right. Trump, America first. That's what we're talking about here. The culture war, the culture divide, it's always going to be there. It's going to get progressively more and more divisive. It's not going to come close because we're talking on issues that have an emotional attachment. When you have issues that are emotionally attached, that are talking about your family, about your faith, about freedom, about, you know, children, about gender, about sex, about, you know, being born or being aborted. When you have got these emotional issues, the culture wars are going to be there. You're talking about, you know, whether or not you kneel for the flag, whether or not, you know, you can burn the flag, whether or not, I mean, all these issues are out there, and they are going to be part of the cultural divide. And that's the way it's going to be. And you know what? We play that up, obviously, when we're doing these shows. Everybody that's on the shows, if you're on the liberal side, you're making your liberal talking points. And you're hoping people will, you know, come to your, come to your entity, come to your show, come to your, you know, company, you know, come to wherever it is that, you know, you're talking about in terms of your opinions. If you're on the right, you're a conservative. You certainly want to get your points across. You know, you want people to, engage with you. You want them to hear your opinions. And then you're hoping that absolutely you form together. And now you've got a group and there's another group on the opposite side. Discuss freely, talk about it, get people to come, and then let the market dictate where people are going to go to. That's what it is. The freedom of expression, freedom of ideas. Let people decide for themselves. Go to their separate groups. See if there's any commonality. If there is, great, work together. If there isn't, hey, that's just the way it goes. Anyways, let's hear Ben's response to this.
Enormous amount of what Ana is saying about the nature of sort of the world that we live in, where people feel as though they are going to be ostracized socially. They feel that they might be fired depending on their political point of view. They feel as though if they make comments openly, and this is true for pretty much everybody across the political aisle, actually, with the exception of people who consider themselves on the far left. According to a Cato study, basically every political subgroup in the United States feels uncomfortable speaking openly about what they believe, except if you're on the far left, because then you get to find people's old tweets and do that sort of stuff. But I'm not going to pretend that I think that the culture wars are irrelevant. I don't. I think that many of the culture wars are highly relevant, and not just relevant. I think that they may be indicative of sort of where the country is going, because the way that most people experience interactions with the government, particularly the federal government or with politics generally, is not always based on tax rates or the very minute internecine debates that we have over $3.5 trillion bills that nobody knows what's in, and then everybody just votes before they read the thing. A lot of the way that people engage in politics. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I think that a lot of the ways that socially there's been a pretty strong push from the left over the course of the last 10 years in particular, and it's driven a lot of reactionary resentment on the part of people who are on the right. And I would suggest that a lot of the support for President Trump, for example, was driven by precisely that. It wasn't just about his economic program, which differed from sort of the traditional laissez-faire Republican economic program. A lot of it was about the idea that he was a culture warrior who was going to punish enemies and all of this. And so to pretend that the culture war either doesn't exist, or that people are making it up in their imagination, or that they are overestimating the impact of it on their life, is to ignore how people are being treated in the spaces that they treat with every day, on Facebook, on Twitter, in the workplace. I mean, one of the reasons that my family and I left California is not just because of the living standard, although Florida is way better. It is also because we left a place where we felt as though our children were going to be socially ostracized for a place where we feel our children are not going to be socially ostracized, and that's a big thing.
Yeah. No, I mean, you actually brought
Now, Ben Shapiro basically, he masterfully basically breaks it down, as I was talking before when Anna, talked about, tried to make her point, is that Ben says, look, politically, we have differences or whatever. Okay, that's fine, but there's no emotion attached to it. But on the social fabric side of it, he's talking that's exactly where the culture war resides. And President Trump was a culture warrior. He was the one that fought back. Now, some people thought that he fought back too much. And the problem was that we had people before that didn't fight back at all. We had moderates like John McCain. Wanted to reach across the aisle all the time. I'm bridging a gap between the aisles. Okay, I'm bridging that gap. I want to be, bring everybody together, have a kumbaya moment. You can't do that with a lot of these policies that have an emotional attachment to it. Okay, like I said, we can argue on tax, we can argue on trade, we can argue on energy, all those other things. Okay, fine. But when you're trying to get on the cultural side, on the social side, what he talked about, gender, sex, bathroom usage, men competing in women's sports, when you're talking about abortion, all of these issues, okay, you can't be milquetoast about it like Mitt Romney and the others. You have to have a spine. It has to be an absolutely unbreakable, a titanium, vanadium spine. I mean, that's what you need to have. And President Trump showed us how you go on the offense every single time. You go on the offense and offense. You don't be on defense. You don't stay back on your heels. And that's why, in terms of this cultural war, the cultural battles on the social scale, they are going to be there, folks, because it is very difficult to compromise on things when you take a look at it and you're trying to invoke and say, you know what you're saying is absolutely crazy. It's delusional. It's unnatural. It shouldn't be. We can't let kids, like, for example, you can't let kids decide at the age of 7 or 8 that they want to self-mutilate themselves to become the opposite sex. But on the social scale, there's people who say, no, that's perfectly fine for children. That's perfectly fine for minors. They can make that decision. The brain isn't only fully functional to someone's 25 or 26. But no, go ahead. It's okay for a 5-6-year-old to tell mommy and daddy that they want to have, gender reassignment surgery. I mean, this is the way, but so there is, for people, for example, people would say about Christmas, Merry Christmas. No one's saying it. It's Happy Holidays again. Can't say Halloween anymore. It's, Happy Candy Day. You can't have, you can't have a Christmas special. It has to be the Winter Solstice Festival. I mean, this is a Judeo-Christian country. It doesn't matter. There are other religions inside here, but primarily it's a Judeo-Christian country. The social warrior factors are always going to be here. We're always going to be battling those. Let's go on here. What I think Anna is going to have watching. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscription button, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. Let us know in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree? You disagree? Love to hear your thoughts. And I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.